welcome everyone to the Islanders Never Say Die podcast. I'm your host, TJ, and with me again, as always, is our NHL analyst and expert, the Grumpy Old Man. They say there's no shame in his game because he's always the same.
That's me.
Now, Grumpy, I guess some Islanders news. Oh, I'm sorry. You got something to say. Go ahead, Grump.
I want to stop you because last time you were supposed to read an ad and you wound up doing it 400 hours into the episode. So I don't know if you're supposed to read an ad right now. But if you are, I'm giving you the opportunity.
Well, I'm glad you have reminded me, Grump, because I actually had totally forgotten again. We do have an ad to read here from DraftKings saying the 55th Super Bowl is this weekend, 55, and the game this big deserves a big prize, not just some trophy. And DraftKings, the official daily fantasy sports partner of Super Bowl 55, has up to $55 million in total prizes up for grabs with their Super Bowl prediction pool. How big is that, Grumpy Old Man? All you have to do to get your share of these huge prizes is enter DraftKings free Super Bowl prediction challenge. Once you submit your picks, you will get an instant free prize for up to $25,000. And if you have most predictions correct, you could win the top prize of up to $1 million. Download the app now and enter the free prediction challenge. Answer questions like who will score last, and boom, you're ready to make it rain. DraftKings has paid out over $7 billion to its players since 2012, so they know a thing or two about big paydays. Download the DraftKings app now and use the promo code THPN to enter for free $55 million Super Bowl prediction challenge. Everyone gets an instant prize up to $25,000 just for playing. So use the promo code THPN now in order to enter the free $55 million Super Bowl challenge. Only DraftKings, the official daily fantasy partner of Super Bowl 55. Terms and conditions and eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Thank you, Grumpy. I would have forgotten the ad read, I'm sure, again, as usual.
Well, that's why I'm here. I'm always here. I got my bucket out to bail you out when you keep on screwing up. Don't worry.
And you say it in such an endearing way there, Grumpy.
I'm here for you.
Well, since our last live stream was Saturday, Grumpy Old Man, that was post Flyers game. It was a different atmosphere for you and I. It's our first time we ever did like a post game reaction, Grumpy. I was feeling you out a little bit. I didn't know what to expect from the Grumpy Old Man post game, to be honest.
I was just so dejected. I mean, there's so many things that we need to do better. I'm worried about where the team's at right now. I am. So I was a little bit down, not really angry, just kind of where are we going? A little introspective.
Taking a second to digest. And since the live stream, Grumpy Old Man, the Islanders played the Philadelphia Flyers again, lost in overtime. Again. I was about to say, again, not ideal. I thought Sorokin looked great. Again, there are positives that we can take from these isolated incidents that have brought us all, I guess, a little bit of unfortunate luck as of recent, Grumpy. But I can tell you one thing. Man, oh man, Sorokin made some acrobatic, outstanding saves that game.
Yeah, you can tell he's got ability. He doesn't look real big in net, though. I don't know what it is. You look at some guys, and he's 6'3". I mean, when I look at him, like, what is he, like 5'11"? I don't know. It just seems like he's not big in net. I mean, he's skinny. I saw him do an interview, post-game interview, one game, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's so skinny. But you see some of these other goalies, like they take up the whole net. And there just looks like there's spots open on net for him all the time. But he is incredibly athletic in goal, without a doubt. He made a couple of saves that were just spectacular in that game.
Well, I'll tell you this much. That's one thing always with goalies. I mean, there's a lot of goalies that you think would be, hey, they're wearing a big pad. You always think they're going to be relatively large, and they're just always skinny as a rail.
I don't think his pads are real big. Maybe that's what it is. He just doesn't seem like he takes up. I'm looking like, ooh, look at those spots that you could pick on him. I mean, I think he's still getting used to the North American game, but there's no denying he has talent, without a doubt.
Yeah, Grumpy. And again, we're trying to look at a few of the positives. I thought that was definitely a positive, though. And it's no, I guess you could say it's not a mystery. The Islanders they got their games postponed against the Buffalo Sabres here. They were supposed to play yesterday, Tuesday, and then they were supposed to play tomorrow on Thursday there against the Buffalo Sabres. Those games were postponed there due to COVID protocol. Islanders have not had any members of their team test positive yet or been placed there on a COVID protocol list, so that is always good. As of right now, the next scheduled game is supposed to be Saturday against the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, and Buffalo hasn't had any people who've tested positive. I mean, my thing is Buffalo played Jersey before us, and they had positive tests on the team, and they went through with that game. So, I mean, I'm just like, why did you go through with that game, and now there's no positive tests, and you're canceling games, which honestly hurts our team and Buffalo, because now we're going to have to jam those games in somewhere. But, I mean, I'm just kind of confused why they didn't cancel the Buffalo Devils game, which would have enabled Buffalo to play 2 games against the Islanders this week. I think the NHL kind of needs to answer for that in some way, shape, or form.
I was about to say, and again, I don't know too much about the COVID protocol. I will tell you one thing. Me, unknowledgeable on it, I would think if somebody tested positive there for COVID, you would probably go ahead and have some sort of action saying, hey, we're not going to play that game, or it's going to be postponed there. We're going to go ahead and, throw it later on in the season. They didn't. Yeah. So that definitely left me scratching my head also, grumpy old man. To also address it, I think this is very opportune for the Islanders. Again, started off the season, we are 3-4-2. Not off to a great start. And I don't think this could have come at a more perfect time for the Islanders.
Well, we certainly need to regroup. Here's the thing. I thought we played better than the Flyers. Both games, honestly, if you take it in totality. I mean, the difference, I think the difference we saw us and the Flyers are, they have a guy, you got Farabee, he's a sniper, right? He gets a shot, he puts it in net. Our guys, you got Clutterbuck, you got Bailey, you have Del Cole. They have wide open shots, and they either bury it right in the guy's chest or they bang it off the pipe. I mean, that's the difference between having guys who are, true goal scorers and guys who are, third and fourth liners, which is what we are.
Okay. Well, I will tell you this much, Grumpy. I mean, Joel Farabee had an outstanding game. He had a hat trick. And, you just kind of left there thinking to yourself, I'm like, oh, yeah, Joel Farabee. He was the same exact draft class there as Oliver Wahlstrom. So you hope, obviously, Wahlstrom continues to improve there. He was actually substituted. I guess you could say he was benched. And so was Kiefer Bellows in that second game against the Philadelphia Flyers. Maybe it was because it was in a back-to-back setting. They felt more comfortable rolling out there with Sarnak, Michael Del Cole, and Timosov. So they went ahead and removed Leo Komarov, Kiefer Bellows, and Oliver Wahlstrom there from the lineup for that second half of, or from the the second half of the back-to-back game against the Flyers.
I don't understand it. It just defies all logic. They had a really good game the first time they were together the night before. I mean, I'm flabbergasted, honestly, why he's benching the younger players to just add more just bottom line guys. I mean, Timosov was invisible. Michael Del Cole is what he is. I was impressed with Jarnac, and he's a guy that, I thought showed very well against the Flyers. To me, if you want to make a point, you bench the fourth line, which has been bad all year. I mean, you're not going to bench the second line guys who's also been bad. But I mean, the fourth line's been invisible this year. If you want to send a message, you bench those fourth liners, guys making almost $10 million a year against the cap, and you put those young guys, you put those guys in as a fourth line, as an energy line. And this way you kind of know what they're doing. Timosov does not belong up here. He was just a passenger all night. I was not impressed with him at all. But I thought Jarnac was good, and Michael Del Cole, you know what you're getting. Jarnac was the one guy who I thought could play at the NHL level. The other two guys, no.
Yeah, grumpy old man. I was a little baffled also by the the removal there of Bellows and Wallstrom there from the lineup. I thought they came off of probably the best game they had played so far in this young season. I thought it was the second game they were together there as a line, or maybe it was the first game they were together as a line because the game before Bellows played on the second line. I thought Zarnak looked pretty good too. Grumpy old man. I will tell you this much: I was happy Leo Komarov was benched. I mean, we've seen enough of Leo. Uncle Leo should not have a spot any longer on this team.
Trotz makes some of those baffling comments that it just makes me want to pull my hair out of my head, honestly. He's like, well, the young guys played well, but, the older guys, you know what you get from them. So they have more leash and more rope. I mean, let's be honest. Leo Komarov he's been every 3 games he's played, and he's been bad for all 3 games. He cost them one of the games. I just think he's been undisciplined. He's been 2 steps too slow. I'm just not a believer in what he's doing out there right now. It's just frustrating, honestly.
Yeah, Grumpy. I was about to say, I kind of echo that. And I think we should, hopefully, ideally, we don't see any more of Leo Komarov. Again, you know exactly what you have with both him and Michael Del Cole. I was impressed with Zarnak. I want to see more of him. And during this situation, I know there is some positive news also. Anthony Beauvillier, he got off to a little bit of a slow start here to start the season, but he was back out there skating yesterday, not with the normal team, not with the team. He was skating, I believe, in a separate session, but he was out there skating again, which is always reassuring.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we obviously need him back. I mean, even though he's been no-show the whole year too. I just want to say a couple of things about Zarnak though before we go on to something else. He was really good. I don't know how he got. What does it say about our team when you have a guy who's really, for the most part, a bottom line player? He comes in and he's getting first line power play minutes. What does it say about the talent level on our team?
That I could not agree more with, Grumpy. I'm glad you brought that up. I had forgotten. It felt like that Sunday game was forever ago now. We're Wednesday. But that's right. He gets integrated up into the lineup, and day one, he's on the first power play unit.
On the first power. Now, that said, he came back and made a nice defensive play on a 2-on-1 coming back the other way. Noah Dobson was back, but that could have led to a goal. I mean, it was a great hustle play. I like him. I think he's done a really good job so far. So like I said, it's only been 1 game, but he's the one guy who they brought up last that I thought was anything. I mean, I would certainly stick with the young guys.
Yeah, Grumpy. Again, I think they have to go ahead and establish a little bit of continuity there on the third line. And that's the thing, right? Barry Trotz came out there and also said that in a recent interview, Grumpy old man, that's what he's looking to go ahead and do here coming up. He needs to establish a little bit of consistency amongst the line. And playing this carousel game to where you have multiple different line mates for Jean-Gabriel Pageau, I'm sure it frustrates him. And it's really, really tough to build continuity when you're just getting continually shuffled different line mates.
Yeah. No doubt. To me, you have 2 young players who showed something together, and you let them play 1 game together, and then you take them out of the lineup again. I don't understand it. I mean, I just look at some of the other teams. You look at Boston. You look at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is able to get Farabee a regular shift on there. I mean, and you could say Philadelphia's a better team than we are, right? At least on paper. And they got Nick Frost. He's another guy who plays buku minutes for them. I mean, those are 2 young guys, 20, 21 years old, who they've been able to incorporate them in the lineup. And you look at Boston, right? They have Travis Frederick and who's the other guy? I wrote his name down. Jack Studnicka. I mean, they're another guy, 22, 21 years old. These guys, Frederick went out there against Washington. They were getting beat by Washington. He went out there, and he's only 6 foot tall, I believe, and 210 pounds. He went out there and he challenged Tom Wilson to a fight. And you know what? We need more of that on this team. I mean, isn't that what Matt Martin, the $6 million man, is supposed to do when things are going bad? I mean, like I said, I just think that line, that third line, that fourth line is done. I mean, we need fresh blood. I just wonder how these other teams, Boston is certainly a better team than we are. Absolutely. And somehow they're able to incorporate young players into their lineup, and we're not able to. I just want to know why. And if you say, well, we don't have the talent, well, that's fine. Then guess what? The scouting staff should be fired. Or whoever Lamoriello decides to draft because we want to fill our team with third and fourth liners opposed to skill players, maybe that's a problem also. But I mean, when I see teams that are better than us able to get younger guys in the lineup, but we're not, I just have to ask a question.
Well, Grump, I want to stop you, Grumpy. You're getting on roll. I want to stop you though. You talked about being able to integrate some of the young players. I know this is an easy pop for me, Grumpy old man. Did you happen to see who played last night for the Los Angeles Kings?
Yes, I did. Go ahead, take it away. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Kaliev got out there on the ice, scored his first goal there, and I know, Grumpy old man, I'm shocked you didn't. I know you had to just been waiting to bring it up. I just figured I'd introduce it so it'd make it look like you were continually just waiting to bring up and continue to put salt in the wound. Yeah, but Kaliev was out there on the ice. He scored his first goal. And I know that was the same exact draft class there as Simon Holmstrom, Grumpy. So, again, eventually we will stop beating that dead horse. But
not me. I'm going to hammer that horse because it was a mistake then. It's a mistake. It was a mistake 2 years ago. It's a mistake now. It's going to be a mistake 2 years from now because Kasper, he's underwhelming. What does the team need? It's so interesting. I was watching something. I just happened to pop up something on YouTube talking about Mike Bossy and how when the Islanders drafted him, as everybody knows, not a great defensive player, but boy, could he score. And Dennis Potvin said, they were a good team before Bossy got there, but, they were really good defensively, but couldn't put the puck in the net. They really struggled with that. Does that sound familiar? I don't know. It does to me. And, they drafted a guy who could play, and Arbor famously said, you know what? I can teach a guy to play defense. You can't teach guys to score goals. Yeah. And when Potvin, legendary Islander, Hall of Famer, one of the top 5 defensemen, all-around defensemen all time, says that, you know what, that goal scorer turned us around. Maybe we should look at goal scorers in the draft. I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but maybe it's something we should consider.
All righty, Grumpy. He hit it. For everybody at home who's got their bingo card out there, you can go ahead and mark that one off. Grumpy, I do want to get to a few comments here. Will saying, hopefully these postponed games will give us some time to recharge. I was about to say, we talked about it earlier, there is not a better time for the Islanders to have this, this little extended break. I mean, they have to come out Saturday against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I mean, they have to be firing on all cylinders. And before I allow you to respond to that, Grumpy, somebody mentioned something interesting. Bruce Kingston, I was listening to this, and I've listened to a few other people talk about this too. Looks like the energy's not in it. Looks like the Islanders just aren't bought in the same way they have been in the past. And I wonder, and I've been thinking a little bit, Grumpy, as to what those reasons might be. But I want to ask, have you noticed the same thing?
Well, first I want to respond to Will's comment. Thank you for taking it down so I couldn't read it now.
Here you go, Grumpy. I'll bring it back up for you.
My question is, if you need to recharge after 9 games, you're in trouble. I mean, I don't know if recharge is the word I'd use. Maybe regroup would be a better word. But now answer the second question. But it does come at a good time for us, yes. In response to your other question, what was your other question? I'm totally lost. I'm sorry.
Great, Grumpy. I'll give it to you. I was asking if you think the Islanders have looked disinterested so far this season. And I've heard it from a few people. And again, I didn't think necessarily that at the beginning of the year. But then I was like, okay, maybe I will, I'll entertain a thought. And, I've got a few ideas on it, Grumpy. I was just wondering if you thought they've been a little disinterested.
I don't know if they're disinterested. I always worry when coaches come out with the excuse train, like Barry Trotz did. It bothers me, especially, when everything's about accountability and all that stuff. And then you come out, Trotz's comments were, the road trip seems so long. You have to spend so much time in a hotel. You can't go out and do things. Well, I hate to tell you something, Barry. It's the same for every team. So this is not anything special. I mean, your guys should know about that. When they were in the bubble, it was the same thing, and they were fine enough then. My concern is that we're just, some of our players who are older maybe are on the downside now. And maybe it's not lack of interest. Maybe it's the fact that they're just slowing down a little bit because, you get into your 30s and you're just not as productive. And you see NHL careers, once guys hit 31, 32, especially non-elite players, they spiral down and they lose it quick. It's a young man's game. It just really is. That's my concern. Is it the fact that we're an older team and we can't keep up with the hectic schedule that we have.
I'm not sure, Grump. I was thinking, I didn't have that thought. I mean, like, that's been an overarching thought. I think long term, that's going to be detrimental to the Islanders' success. That's not something short term I was looking at. Short term, I was thinking about like this. I know we were on a road stand, but I wonder how much the no longer playing in front of fans may have affected the Islanders. And again, this is a long thought, Grump. You're going to have to hear me out on this. I know during the bubble, we did.
I have something to drink, so take your time.
Well, I know during the bubble, Grumpy old man, it was different atmosphere, obviously. We're playing for the Stanley Cup. It's easy to be motivated, especially when you're in the playoffs and you could see what our tangible goal is. It's only right here. You know what I mean? Every single series you had to win to move on. So every single game really was important and mattered. Now I feel maybe some of these older guys on the team would rather not be playing this year, Grumpy. And again, like, this is not thoughts that I've heard a few people mentioning this. I'm not saying the entire team is disinterested. I'm just saying, we don't have Fort Never Lose. We're no longer in the Coliseum. You don't have the crazy fans. And it's easy, right? When you're slipping and sliding, or you feel like you're losing a little momentum, going to the Coliseum and playing in front of the crazy Islander fans, I feel like has to just go ahead and re-energize you. I really do. And I'm wondering if some of that, not seeing the fans, not seeing the people who are cheering and rooting you on, seeing the people that cheer and root for you every single game, watch every single game, having them say, you can do it, and things like that. I wonder if that's affected the Islanders a little bit.
Well, I will say there's some validity to one of the things you said about being in the bubble. You knew that it was going to be, 16 games to a championship, right? 16 wins to a championship. So maybe you could see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. But you're looking here, you're talking about by the time that the playoffs are over, you're looking at 80 games probably for the team that wins the whole thing. It won't be the Islanders, but whoever does, you're probably looking at 80 games, right? And maybe it takes a little bit more out of them. I mean, like I said, a lot of these are older players. Maybe they don't. I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on it, honestly. But once again, when you don't have high-end talent and you don't have, and I'm not saying we don't have full buy-in, but if some little things go wrong, you don't have someone who can save the day. We have one guy who can save the day, but he's only one guy, and he's getting a lot of criticism right now.
We'll talk about that too. I will say this much, Grumpy. You talk about the buy-in. I think there's buy-in, but again, like, for the Islanders and for this team, this is a team that has to do everything well, and they have to be so nuanced in order to be successful. They can't have any type of mental lapses, and what we're seeing here is these mental lapses, they're leading directly to goals for other teams. And again, like, when you don't have the ability to execute on another team's mental lapse just because you're not as, I guess you could, I'm using air quotes for people who are listening to the podcast and post, who are as skilled offensively, it makes it tough.
Buy-in was the wrong word. You hit it on the hell. You hit it right on the head, the nail on the head. It's, little mistakes. We can't make mistakes if we're going to win games. The margin of victory for us is so slim that when we turn the puck over, it's just crazy. The official makes a bad call against Philadelphia on that offsides. I thought, I think it was the first goal of the game.
Oh, you talk not an offsides. It was an icing call.
Icing. That's right. I'm sorry. On the icing call, where I thought it was definitely icing, and he doesn't blow. I was baffled by that. I'm like, why not? And then Brock Nelson just kind of dumps the puck right in the center of the ice, right to Farabee, snapshot goal. And it's like, okay. When you're in mites, what do you always tell the kids, don't throw the puck in the center of the ice. My wife knows that, and she's no hockey fan. She's like, why is he throwing the puck in the center of the ice? Everybody knows you don't do it. You push it up along the boards. He dumps it right in the center of the ice, wide open, Farabee, snapshot goal. It's like, I'm flabbergasted. What he's doing. He's been bad this season. I mean, for as good as he's been the first 2 years under Trotz, he's been bad this offseason. He seems like he's on the ice for every goal, every bad goal that we give up. I mean, the overtime loser was because he wasn't marking his man. It was a power play 4-on-3. I'm like, okay, let's just get to shootout. Maybe we'll get lucky. And he goes, you have a guy who's coming down the side. You have Mayfield picking him up. He's got a bad angle. Nelson leaves his man in front of the slot and goes after the same guy. He's wide open. Bingo, bango, goal.
He's puck watching. Anyway, we got to hear a few comments. Yeah, again, I don't think Brock Nelson's had a terrific start to the season. I think the second line has looked kind of lost out there. I think the fourth line, the identity line, has looked lost out there at times too, Grumpy. We do have a comment here from David saying, Grump, when Beauvillier returns, what do you think of him on the second line and the two kids playing with Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Michael Del Cole and Sarnak playing with Casey, Sit Martin, and Clutterbuck?
Okay, leave that up because that's a lot. Okay, second line. I mean, he's going to return to the second line because he drives that line. As he goes, that line goes. If he's not generating the offensive chances, you know that Nelson's going to do it. Bailey, when he was on that line, we all know he does nothing out there. He's a sidecar. So Beauvillier will return to that. I think with that line, maybe he'll work with he and Eberle. I don't know. The third line should be Pageau with Wahlstrom and Bellows, without a doubt. That they should not change that line up. The fourth line, Casey's got to play. I wouldn't mind having Jarnac in there, and I would play Clutterbuck. I'd sit Martin. Michael Del Cole should never see the lineup. He doesn't bring anything to the table. He brings nothing to the table. I mean, Clutterbuck at least. And what is he, 33 years old? Cal's 33 years old, right?
He's 32 or 33 years old, grumpy old man.
Okay. It's winding down his career. I mean, he's not with the player he was, but he's still better than Michael Del Cole.
I will tell you this much about Cal Clutterbuck. I would rather have, and again, like I know he's got the issues and he's a smaller guy who plays a physical style. I still would rather have Cal Clutterbuck on the ice than Michael Del Cole. I would not mind at all Zarnak. And again, I guess you don't really have the quote unquote more of the physical presence. I guess you could say Matt Martin has a physical presence, but I mean, you're really talking about diminished returns as of the physical presence. I mean, as much as Matt Martin pretends like he's got some bark that he wants to fight somebody or mix up, I don't know. If a big guy were to come up to Matt Martin and be like, hey, let's throw down, I'm not sure Matt Martin's going to be frothing at the mouth to take that challenge. Again, I just think he's older, and that's just not part of his game anymore. Matt Martin's not a fighter anymore.
Okay.
Not like he was at the younger part of his career, Grumpy.
Yeah, he's not a fighter at all anymore. I mean, he is what he is. How does that contract look now? Not even 10 games into that contract, it already looks abominable. And we got another 3 years to go after this horrible year.
I will say we got to take it with a grain of salt, though, Grumpy. I know we're only what? Yeah, well. We're not 9 games in, or we're only 9 games in, Grumpy.
Yeah. Okay. And he's been horrible. He's been really, really bad. What's the excuse? What is the $6 million man's excuse? Does he not have Lindsay Wagner at the end of the night to keep him happy? She was the bionic woman. I mean, maybe that's what he needs to rev his engines. I don't know, but whatever it is, he's not doing it on the ice right now. I loved everybody said, "Oh, Matt Martin, he scored 5 goals in the playoffs." Okay. Do you really expect that success? I mean, he's not a goal scorer. So he got lucky in the playoffs. He got hot in the playoffs, and he parlayed that. He fooled the fossil into giving him a 4-year deal at $1.5 million per. I mean, like I said, I couldn't believe he even signed him at all. You know, with the premise being, well, we had to give him that much because someone, might have offered him more. Well, you know what? If someone gives more money than that to a 32-year-old fourth liner, bye-bye. We'll just put somebody else in your spot.
And Grumpy, we have a comment here from earlier, and again, I'm slowly getting into the comments. You got to bear with me here, Grump. Tommy Baffy going ahead and chiming in. This is about your earlier comment about Potvin. He says the Islanders needed to lose a heartbreaking series to become a dynasty, losing to Toronto and the Rangers in 1978 and 1979 taught them how to win.
Toronto, that was the worst loss ever. That was even worse than losing to the Rangers. We were such a great team that year. We were so good, and we got beaten the quarterfinals, which is the first round for us. And Lanny McDonald, that piece of garbage, scored the winning goal in overtime in Game 7. I was crushed. That was a crushing loss for me. I've never gotten over it. I mean, I can see it. I still see it now in my mind. In 1979, John Davidson was hot as a firecracker. in that playoff series, in that playoff round. He single-handedly won them the series. And then they actually beat Montreal in the first game of the finals. And then they turned into the pumpkins that they are. So, that Toronto series was tough. And then, but if you ever listen to the old Islanders talk, you hear that, when Butch Goring came in, he brought some levity, and they didn't realize how good they were. And that was the first thing that Butch said to them. These guys didn't know how good they were, but they were a spectacular team. I mean, really. And once they won, and Butch has even said it, once they won that first series, the next three were easy. The next three Stanley Cups were easy. And I thought they were going to beat Edmonton, even though they were so banged up going for Cup 5. I was certain they were going to beat them, and that was an end of an era when they lost there.
Yeah, Grumpy, I'll tell you that they won the first series there. It's like getting the proverbial monkey off the bat here. Comment here from Matthew saying, "How are they going to make up these games? They can't give us too many in compression in a week."
That's what they're going to do. They're gonna if there's ever two days in between, we're going to have back-to-backs. You're seeing that's going to be happening with Carolina, with Dallas. Dallas is hot. My gosh, they're flying right now. But that's what it's going to be. And that's not something good for our team. As an older team, more games in a shorter time span is not good for our team.
Well, again, it wouldn't be hideous for our team if we determined to integrate some of the younger blood. And again, I think it's important, Grumpy. You see a lot of these coaches, and it's across the league. It's not like we're talking about isolated incidents here. But when some of their quote unquote, what do they call them? Like fat cats, star players, fat cats, whatever you want to call them. If they don't perform, or they look like they've done something incorrectly as of recent, and they just haven't played well the last game, they'll sit and bench them. And again, this is not something that I ever think that Barry Trotz will do to any of the members of the top six of the Islanders. It doesn't matter if he's Josh Bailey. I know Josh Bailey scored a goal. I think it was that nice redirection goal on the power play. But again, it doesn't matter whether it's Josh Bailey performing poorly, or Brock Nelson performing poorly, or even Anthony Beauvillier or Anders Lee. If any of those players perform poorly, I don't think they ever have the threat of being benched.
No. Look at the Philadelphia game, right? Nick Leddy and Anders Lee in overtime, they get pressured a little bit. They dump the puck in the center, and it's 2-on-1s the other way. These are the veterans. These are the guys that you're trusting on your team, and these are the guys who are making these mistakes. And you know what? And I know we're getting to Matt Barzal, but I'm just going to tell you what. Anders Lee caused that whole situation by a lazy pass because somebody put pressure on him, and he just turned it over in the offensive zone, come back the other way. Barzal was absolutely freaking gassed going back on that play, which led to the high stick. And just to hear the vitriol against him by the announcers, I'm just like, how about we talk about the real elephant in the room, right? The fact that your veterans, your trusted veterans, are the ones who continually turning the puck over and making these mistakes, but nobody calls them out on it. It's frustrating for me as a fan.
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you one thing. Again, there's a lot of vitriol online as well. People are claiming, hey, you need to bench Matt Barzal. He's too careless and reckless with the stick. I will say Matt Barzal does take a few high-sticking penalties. For certain, he does. And again, they use the inflated – and again, he does have, I think it's 20 or 24 penalty minutes. I cannot remember off the top of my head, which is a lot, especially for this early in the game. But still, he had that 10-minute game misconduct penalty, and he also had the double minor there for a high stick he had served there earlier on in the year. He is high sticking a little more often than you'd like. But you know what? When it comes down to the brass tacks, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. The guy leads our team in goals, assists. He leads our team in penalties drawn, and he's one of only 3 members in the NHL right now to have a share of over 50% of their team's scored goals. So Matt Barzal is the entire offense as of this point right now. Does he need to control a stick? Absolutely. Could you bench him? That would be, in my opinion, that would be beyond dumb. And this is the issue. There are so many players that you pay on your team to score goals. And there's so many players that you pay on your team to create offensive chances, and they're not doing so. Just because you can't tangibly point at the actual stat sheet and say, well, we had the puck this many times in the offensive zone and nothing positive came out of it, and nothing came to fruition, maybe we should bench him. I don't know. It's the same exact thing, right?
Get out your scorecard, because here comes another grumpy old man popular refrain. There's only one guy on the whole team who creates any offense. One guy. And he's the guy you want to bench. Why? Because he drew a couple of penalties? Take away the 10-minute misconduct, you got 14 minutes. All right. Optimally, you don't want Matt Barzal in the penalty box ever. At least Trotz did not come out and really, because there was one of these reporters just laying it up there for him. It's like, oh, what about Matt Barzal taking that penalty? My question would have been, what about Anders Lee, just below average Anders Lee, just dumping that puck right in the middle of the ice so it's a 2-on-1? And who's the only guy back covering? It's Matt Barzal. Where's everybody else? Maybe they're just too slow to get back. I mean, those are the type of things that drive me crazy. You want to punish the best player on your team. Why? Because he got a high stick up and it led to an overtime goal. Well, here's the thing. If Brock Nelson would have done his job and stuck with his man in front of the net, we would have got to shootout and we wouldn't have had that issue. It's not Matt Barzal. It's all the other guys not picking up. So what? Everyone makes mistakes, right? Everyone makes mistakes. He makes a mistake and the rest of the team isn't good enough to overcome the mistake of Matt Barzal. You want to sit him on the bench? Go ahead. Sit him on the bench. Let's see how many goals, let's see how many games in a row we can get shut out in, because that's what would happen.
Grumpy old man.
Goals in 9 games. That's unacceptable. 19 goals in 9 games.
I mean, you're barely over 2 goals a game average right there. I mean, that's man, oh man. We've talked about it before. The dearth and the lack of offensive ability on the team is what's going to be the downfall. I'll never have questions about the team's ability to play defense and the goaltending. That usually is always rock solid. It's just the offensive ability, offensive acumen. I'll tell you this much. The Islanders know how to draft defensemen as well. You talked earlier, Grump. I wanted to add in earlier. You talked earlier, Grumpy old man, about, if you're not scouting the right way, we need to go ahead and get rid of those guys. I'll tell you one thing. Whoever is consistently scouting and identifying these young defensive prospects who are growing and blossoming into top 4 defensemen across the NHL, that needs to be kept. And I can't tell you how much of a benefit it has been for the Islanders and will continue to be for the Islanders. You're thinking to yourself, Robin Salo is having another killer year as well in the Swedish Elite League. 37 games in, I think he's plus 14, got 5 goals, 20 assists. He's really taken a big step forward. Bodie Wild's going to perform. They are extremely enthusiastic about his performance and his increase there this offseason, as well as Samuel Bolduc. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, oh man, isn't that a great problem to have? Multiple defensemen above 6 foot who can skate, who are playing extremely well. I mean, like top 4 defensemen like that do not grow on trees. So as much as we find issue there with the offensive performance, the defense doesn't seem to be an issue anytime soon, Grumpy. And again, it's always good to see that, Robin Salo is continuing to perform this season.
Yeah. I'd like, to me, Andy Green has looked slow the last couple of games. I think Noah Dobson's carrying him at this point in time. I just do. I was all for signing Andy Green this offseason, but it looks like he's lost a step for certain. He's getting beat to pucks in the corners. He's lacking. He just seems like he's a step or two slow. And when you're 37, 38 years old, that's what happens. I mean, you lose a step, particularly on defense, and that's the end real quick. We do have some younger guys coming up. How about just for one night, let's give Sebastian Aho a shot. He's been riding the bench for 2 years now. Let's give him a shot.
Well, he hasn't been riding the bench for 2 years. He was down there in the AHL for the last 2 years. I will tell you this. Again, this is a thing, right, Grumpy? And I think you and I both agree on this. Andy Green is a guy in an optimal world, if healthy, and when he's at full capacity, has full energy, he is head over heels better than Sebastian Aho, in my opinion. Still at this age, even at this advanced age in his career. I just solely believe that. Why not put him on a plan to where you are going to integrate some of those younger guys? I mean, Sebastian Aho is signed to a one-way deal next year. He's going to be up with the Islanders, or he's going to be waived and somebody else is going to claim him. So why not slowly integrate him into the lineup to where, okay, we're playing a lesser team. Let's throw a guy like Sebastian Aho in here. Andy Green, you're going to get a maintenance day so you can go ahead and get healthy and stay healthy. The bumps and bruises and the nicks on players continue to accrue as the seasons go on. And especially when you have moments like this where the Buffalo Sabres, now we've missed 2 games, they're going to be thrown in. Now that's going to be at least 2 weeks this year that we're going to have an extra load. To have to handle. So, it's good to make sure that you're taking the maintenance time if players need it, especially the older players on the team.
Well, I want to answer the first part of your question. Why is he not getting a shot? Because he doesn't play shuffleball on the Islanders cruise in the offseason with Lou. That's probably it where, the
You
older
mean
guys do.
shuffleboard, Grumpy? You called it shuffleball, I think.
Shuffleboard. You shuffle a
Shuffleboard.
little thing. That's what old people do. Or at least I've been told. And I'm sure that's what Lou does. But like I said, you said Andy Green. Yeah, in his prime, Andy Green's better than Sebastian Aho. But at this point, is he? I don't know. But to your point, yes, I'd like to get him out there just to get him acclimated to see what can happen. I mean, why not put him out there with Scott Mayfield and put Letty out there with Dobson for a game? I mean,
well, here's the thing, Grumpy old man, and I've always been a big believer in this. It's good to have depth, and Sebastian Aho does have NHL experience. I'm just saying, if you're noticing, and that is the actual issue, if Andy Green is starting to get a little bit tired during these condensed schedules, the year is going to be somewhat condensed here. And as you're playing those back-to-backs, why not give him a game off? Again, if that's something he needs to stay fresh, you need him to be fresh. You need him to be healthy. I've got no issue with it at all. 37, 38-year-old defensemen don't have the same recovery rates as some of these younger players these days. So again, I have no problem at all with entertaining that idea. Grump, I do have a comment here from Tommy Baffy as well saying, I like how Sarnak played. He fit with Pajot on a third line. And I think Pajot and Sarnak and Bellows will become our third line. I don't mind that at all.
I don't want Sarnak on that line. I'd rather have Wahlstrom on that line with Bellows and Pajot. I'd rather play Jarnac on the fourth line. That's what I would do. I don't want to see Wahlstrom riding the bench all year or playing on the fourth line. He needs to be with guys. Pajot can create chances for people. Bellows is really good in the corners, and you're seeing Wahlstrom go in the corners. I like the way that line looked. I'm just disappointed he broke that up after one game. And the only reason he did it is because they're younger players. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. There was no reason performance-wise why he should have done it. Like I said, sit the whole fourth line. They've done nothing all year. Or how about, you know what, you want to really send a message? Sit Brock Nelson for a night. Maybe that'll wake his ass up.
I was about to say, I'm a big supporter of Brock Nelson, a big champion of Brock Nelson, right? But in the same token, hasn't played well this year. And you look at last game, right? How many more times can I see him consistently throw the puck out towards the middle of the ice or not mark his man, get caught watching the puck, grumpy old man? I'm just not sure how long we can continue to watch that. I'll tell you, I would not be opposed to benching a guy who's one of these holy cows that can do no wrong, or that are in our top six, that are, the veterans. They do so much for us. You know what? It sends a message. And again, that's why I think that people are saying, hey, bench Matt Barzal, he's the best player on our team. That sends a message to everybody else. Yeah, I get it. But in the same token, right, the issue is not the problem. Hold on,
not the problem.
Hold on, Grump. The issue is not that we're taking too many penalties. The issue isn't like we're leading the NHL in penalty minutes or penalty minutes surrendered. The issue is we're not scoring goals. You got to address the actual issue. And again, like the stupid penalties, they're mind-boggling. You hate to see it. I mean, a high stick like that, oh man, there's nothing that grinds your gears. But in the same token, he does so much well that it's easy for me to overlook.
He was absolutely out of gas on that shift. When Lee made that bad pass, which led to the 2-on-1, which led to the high stick, he could barely even skate back. And you know what? They say fatigue makes fools of us all. Or fools, or what is it? I don't know. I'm like a fool over here. It makes cowards of us all is what it says. And I'm going to tell you what, when you're out of gas over there, you know what? It's easy to see that stick, get up a little bit. He couldn't even skate back. He couldn't even skate backwards. He was just barely getting back. And because he was out there for a long shift, he was getting ready to get off, and then below average, just dumps the pass right into the center of the zone to get picked off. And, no one wants to call him out on that. Captain below average. No one wants to call him out. No, let's just rip Matt Barzal, the only guy who does anything for this team. This team feels so much like the early years of John Tavares, was John Tavares and everybody else. That's exactly what this team feels like right now.
Grumpy old man. Okay. Jumping along here. Big question to me is, are we watching the beginning of the end of the identity line? Yes. The identity line should be long gone by now. You know what I mean? It's time. I'm sorry. Matt Martin, he's not looked great so far this year. It's unfortunate we signed him there to a 4-year extension. Nice guy. Love him. Great guy. Great Islander. In the same token, though, man, oh, man. for players like that, and it's easy too, right? When players on a fourth line aren't performing and doing exactly what they're supposed to do, you're trying to tell me you can't throw another guy, one of our depth pieces out there to fill the same role? I'm sorry. I just I don't believe it.
Fourth lines are energy lines, right? Are they providing any energy? No. I mean, they've been on the ice. They've been on the ice to start games against Philadelphia twice, and they've just been absolutely dominated off the jump. I mean, just dominated off the jump. Their time is up. I mean, the greatest fourth line of hockey. How long did you live on that rep? How many years ago did Don John Cherry say that? 4 years ago? Well, you got two guys who are well in their 30s and another guy who's going to be 30 this year, right? Casey, I love Casey, injury prone, up for another contract. As far as I'm concerned, next year, none of those guys should be back. Absolutely none of them. That'll save us $10 million against the cap, or maybe $8.5 million, since the $6 million man is making a little bit less than he was previously. But you just need to move on from those guys. Let some of the young blood come in with some more energy.
Okay, Grumpy. We also have another comment here from Scott saying, I wonder if Lou is telling Barry not to play the kids, or is it Barry? Because in Nashville, when Barry started, he played the kids a lot more. I think it might be Lou. I think I'm actually leaning more towards it's a Barry thing. I mean, Barry Trotz did the same exact thing there in Washington. It was pretty much a veteran group. But, I mean, Vrana was a guy who had offensive ability, but he continued to sit. And I will tell you one thing. It's different in that situation, too, because the Washington Capitals have the ability to score. And they do have that offensive power. They're an offensive juggernaut before Barry got there. So it was a little bit different. For the Islanders, on the other hand, again, I guess that we did score a lot of goals under Doug Waite's system. We were just hideous on defense. We don't have the same offensive ability and talent and the same exact structure. We don't have an Alexander Ovechkin. We don't have a Nicholas Backstrom. Our team is composed differently than theirs. So I think it's a little different. I mean, but he did go ahead and bench Vrana multiple times his last year with the Washington Capitals.
And Burkowski also. Both of those guys. I mean, that was his rep there. He wouldn't play the young guys. And yeah, when he was with Nashville, remember, he was the first coach in Nashville. So they were an expansion team. And it's not like the way expansion teams are now where, they're going to get some pretty good players. The rules were different. You were getting you were getting Islander type players all the time. Guys who were, third and fourth liners, mostly fourth liners.
No.
So it behooved you to play the younger guys, right? I mean, when Lou Lamoriello took over Toronto, they were in such bad shape. They had to play the young guys because they were by far the most talented. I mean, the Mitch Marners, the Austin Matthews,
The list goes on and on, Grumpy Old Man. Yeah, you're right. They did go ahead and take that. And again, it was a pretty quick transition too. The first year, just like the first year, the Islanders instead they're going to go ahead and take stock, and then the next year, that's when they went ahead and completely migrated away, and they went towards that young approach there in Toronto. Didn't do so with the Islanders. Again, I think the makeup is different, and that's the thing behind this. I think the makeup is different. Also have a comment here from Angela. Man, oh man, this is like a softball question. I almost don't want to show it here for Grumpy. Do you think Lou is out of touch with current day hockey? Oh God.
Angela's smart. She knows what she's talking about. That's a cute dog in her picture. Yeah, I mean, it happens to everybody, right? What's he, 77, 78 years old right now? I don't know if he's out of touch. I don't think that he's in touch with the way things are being done around the league, which is to pay the younger players bigger money and let the older players get the scraps. So this way you don't have to overpay them on the back end, because that's the way it used to be, and he's still living back in those times. So I think financially, the game has certainly passed him by.
I think, I was about to say, I think the approach has changed. And again, not even all teams in the NHL that approach where, yes, we're going to pay those younger guys before, right after they finish an entry-level contract, a large amount so we can keep them through the prime. I mean, that is a really, really new development, Grumpy Old Man. That's not something that's happened. And not even all teams and not all teams go ahead and use that approach either.
Guys are locking up their young. All the teams are locking up their young players now. You don't see them going bridge deals. Look what Toronto did. Look what Colorado's done. They're locking up their players for 4 or 5 years. They're not just giving them little 1 or 2 year bridge deals to get them the free agency. That's when you wind up overpaying. We're going to overpay to keep Ryan Pulock, because you gave him a 2-year deal to bring him right to free agency.
I will tell you this, Grumpy. I've had people telling me that the ideal scenario is the Islanders, and this is, again, ideal, Grumpy, that guys like Robin Salo, Bodie Wild, and Samuel Bolduc pan out. But the ideal scenario is that we don't have anybody or Ryan Pulock on our team long term. That's the idea that's been floated around.
Pulock
or Nick Leddy, Grumpy old man. That being said, again, like I've always taken this approach. If you have the farm system and you have the young guys who are ready to step up and are going to be successful, like a Dobson who's able to make that transition into the role of a defenseman there on the NHL team, I have no issue. I have no attachment to Ryan Pulock at all. My thing is this: we are in cap trouble. And what we see here is when teams are in cap issues and they're in cap trouble, they don't get as much for their assets. Again, and I hate to get all nerdy here and break it down economics wise, right? But when you're in a position where you don't have the power, and a guy like Devon Toews is traded away for 2 second-round picks, you don't get enough for a guy who's a top 4 defenseman who's on the top pair for Colorado before he got hurt. And they also bring up Schmidt too, right? They said, oh, well, Nate Schmidt didn't get very much. He plays a top 4 role there in Vancouver after being traded there from the Vegas Golden Knights. It's the same exact thing. The Vegas Golden Knights determined that they were going to go ahead and go out and sign Pietrangelo. Then they were like $8 million over the cap. What do you think realistically you can get when you're $8 million over the cap for a top 4 defenseman? You're not going to get very much. It's the same exact thing. It works unilaterally across the board. If you don't have the free cap space, teams know they can bend you over a barrel and take advantage of you. So the thing is this: if you are ideally thinking about trading a guy like Nick Leddy or Ryan Pulock, you have to have the cap situation, the availability and freedom where you can actually get what you deserve for those players. I'm sick and tired of seeing us trade away good assets, or potentially in these scenarios trade away good assets, and we're going to get pennies on the dollar for it.
Here's the difference. Vegas picked up a way better defenseman in Pietrangelo compared to Schmidt. I mean, Pietrangelo is one of the top 10 defensemen in the league. Nate Schmidt isn't. So they upgraded their team. So maybe they gave him away for a little bit less. We gave away Devon Toews for nothing. And we kept, and you mentioned Nick Leddy. Nick Leddy's 31 years old. Why would you want to re-sign him? He's got 2 more years on his deal. Why would you want him back as a 33-year-old? It's the same process repeating itself. I don't want the old guys getting more term and more dollars at the expense of younger up-and-coming players. You want to be good? Look at the NFL, right? What teams are competing for Super Bowls, with the exception of Tom Brady, of course? Quarterbacks won their rookie contracts. Why? Because they're not getting paid $25 million, $30 million a year. So you can use that salary cap money to fill out the rest of the roster. When you're paying expensive veterans that money, that means that you can't improve your team by making trades because you're up against the cap all the time. I mean, it's just so frustrating when I hear things like that, because here's the thing. It wouldn't surprise me if they get rid of Ryan Pulock and re-sign Nick Leddy. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But why would you want to do that? Ryan Pulock's your number 1 defenseman. Why would you consider even thinking about moving him? It makes no sense.
Okay, it doesn't not make sense, Grumpy, because if we have the young players down there in the system, and again, no Dobson's going to be better than Ryan Pulock. I don't think anybody's going to debate that this time period. And if you're able to see what Robin Salo can do, or a guy like Bodie Wild can do, and if they are stepping into the role, there's no issue with it, right? My issue is if you trade a guy like that, you're not in a situation of power where you're not going to get what they actually earn and they deserve. Ryan Pulock, Grumpy old man, is a guy who's on the power play. He can never hit. He can never find the target of the shot. He's a good defenseman, but the same token, Grumpy, there's a lot of things he still hasn't grown into. I'm not saying trade Ryan Pulock. I'm saying if they do, they have to have certain things in line to where they're not going to get screwed over on the deal.
He's your number 1 defenseman. You don't move your number 1 defenseman. Here's the thing. No problem. But here's the thing. If you have some younger players that are come up, let's say Noah Dobson usurps him, which I think that he will. You wouldn't want to have Ryan Pulock on your second pairing, because you can move. Why not move a Scott Mayfield or a Nick Leddy? Why move Ryan Pulock? He's better than those players. You move the lesser players to keep the better players. That's what you should do. You don't get rid of your right now your number 1 defenseman because you got guys coming up. They're not going to fill that slot right away. You move the lesser guys. That as Dobson gets better, you want him to take over Pulock's spot. Let Pulock slide down to be a second pair defenseman. That would be fantastic. Then you're really solid defensively. You don't move that guy to keep a piece of garbage like Nick Leddy or a Scott Mayfield. They're not as good as he is.
Again, we talked about this, right? In this scenario, they said that they don't see Nick Leddy or Ryan Pulock with the Islanders past this contract. So again, I'm just saying, and this is again with the caveat that everybody works out, that Bolduc pans out, Bodie Wild pans out, and so does Robin Salo. We got a comment here from hold on, Grump. Quickly.
Just one quick thing. You know what? You're a prospect until you're a player. When you're a player, then you're a player. Until then, you're just a prospect. I don't count on anybody who's never played in the league.
Okay. Grumpy old man. Brush Kingston comments and chimes in. Oh, Brush, haven't heard from you in a while. Good to see here. Looks like they will, in the next couple of weeks, offer Robin Salo a contract, and that's going to be huge. I agree. Getting Robin Salo signed and over here, and again, he's performing there in the Swedish Elite League. I'd like to see what he has, especially in the American game. I'm excited for him. I know a lot of people, he's moving up the boards. I mean, people are projecting him now. Maybe he could be a top 4 defenseman when all is said and done. I'm excited for it. That's another guy who's a good puck-moving defenseman, can go ahead and make those outlet passes, has the ability to put the puck on net also. So, again, that would be huge if we're able to do that, Grump.
Well, that's just another young guy. Is he ever going to play? Who knows? I mean,
Robin Salo is not young. He's like 23, almost 24 years old. So I wouldn't call him another young guy.
You don't think that's young compared to the rest of our roster? He's like a spring chicken compared to Andy Green and Nick Leddy. And even Scott Mayfield, right? I mean, look at the ages on those guys. They're all older. Do you think he's going to get a shot? Do you think that they're even going to give him a shot? That's my concern.
Yes.
Is he going to get a shot?
Yeah, Grumpy. Again, he's 22 years old. He's performed there in the Swedish Elite League. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Again, you have to free up spots if you were to go ahead and get a chance, right? Again, this plays into this idea that maybe the reason why Ron Pulak was, and again, you might not agree with it. I'm just presenting this as an idea that was thrown my way, and I think it's not. I think it might not be too far-fetched to entertain the idea is the point, right? The reason why they signed these guys to the bridge deal that Ryan Pulak was signed is because they expect guys like Robin Salo and Bodie Wild, as well as Samuel Bolduc, to be able to step up and to fill the role. Again, it's extremely optimistic. I'm not sure how realistic it is, but it is an idea that has been thrown my way, and I think it's possible.
Okay, I'm going to say it's incompetence by our management team, absolute incompetence. Just like they screwed up Devon Toews, they were incompetent when it came to that. You lost a top pairing, a top 2 pairing defenseman on our team, but a top pairing defenseman on just about any other team in the league, including on Colorado, a top pairing defenseman for 2 second-round draft picks. But you still have guys like Nick Leddy on this team because you like Nick Leddy. He's great. No, he's not. He's on the downside. But these are the guys you want to keep. It's the way they think. We don't care about young players. We only care about old guys. It's just the way it is here.
That's where my comment before, Grumpy Old Man, saying you have to be in a position to stand on your feet where you're not up against the cap comes into play. So I believe the Islanders got sold short there for Devon Toews, which is why I was saying, and I addressed that comment earlier, if they were to trade anything like that, they have to have the available cap space so they don't get screwed over on those type of trades in the future. But
okay. But think about it. You don't have cap space because you continually sign older players to big money long-term deals. Lee, Nelson, Eberle, Martin. I mean, all these guys, all the old guys seem to get big term. I mean, that Comrade. I mean, just add one on top of the other. Instead of going with the youth movement, they go with veterans. That's why you pay too much.
Okay. Gotcha, Grumpy Old Man. Again, we got a lot of comments here. I won't chime too much on this one here. Also from Brush saying, TJ, remember the other day I mentioned about the Islanders willing to want to play this year. And I still believe that some of these players don't really care about playing and the results are showing.
I don't know. I can be critical of the Islanders, but I don't think they're quitters. Absolutely not. I don't believe that.
Yeah, again, I just think maybe the buyout's not 100%, and this is a team that I believe would like cut their arms off for the success of the team. I'm not sure if the same exact, hey, I'm willing to lose a limb for the team is there. I think they still would play their asses off for their teammates, but in the same token, are they willing? I really honestly believe that this team is so tight-knit, and when everything was going well, there's no COVID and things are normal. I think this team would do anything for their team out there. I think it might be getting to them a little bit there because with the COVID and everything, who knows what type of impacts that all has on their family, how many wives, how much of them they're missing their children there, a little more, who knows, Grumpy?
Well, I just think that we're an older team and we're not supremely talented. So when you don't skate as well when you're 30, 31, 32 as you did when you're 23 or 24. And I think with the style that we play, those things add up. I don't think it's quit. I just think that we're just kind of worn down. I mean, they're just older players, and playing that style is not conducive to long-term success. It just isn't. We're going to get beat up.
Okay. We also have a comment here from Tommy Baffy. This is on an earlier point you made, Grumpy Old Man, about the fourth line. One problem with the suggestion of Sarnak playing on the fourth line is you need either Johnston or Martin there as a fourth line as a protector.
Well, they've taken the aggressiveness out of Matt Martin's finished as a fighter, so he's not really a protector. Ross Johnston, they've tried to neuter his game, turn him into a dog, who used to run the neighborhood, but now he just sits on the porch because they want him to play a certain style. To me, you should let Ross Johnston be who he is. I hate when coaches do that. They try to take a player who has a certain style and an aggressiveness to him, and let's just neuter him. Let's try to jam him in, jam that square peg into that round hole. It's always a mistake.
Grumpy Old Man. Yeah, again, I don't disagree. I will say one thing about Ross Johnston. I think he's definitely better. I don't think he's a third line player. I definitely think he's a better option than Matt Martin. But again, the difference is Matt Martin can play the penalty kill. And it's not like I'm out there. Hold on. Well, that's the thing, right? If we're thinking about, fourth liners are fourth liners, Grumpy Old Man. I'm not expecting any scoring production out of my fourth line. I'm just not. And that's when the Islanders take that approach of, hey, our fourth line also needs to contribute offensively. I always think, I'm like, when is that going to stop? That's not going to continue to be the case long term. The seasons of Casey Cizikas scratching 20 goals those are in the rearview mirror. And again, it kind of moves me here into the next thing as well here, Grumpy Old Man. Another comment here from Will saying, unfortunately, we have to ask, how much does Cal Clutterbuck have left in the tank? I think not much. Again, he's a guy I think is a shell of what he used to be, but maybe one, tops 2 years left.
He's only got feeling in two fingers on one hand. I'll tell you what, I like the effort out of him. He's not the player he was. He's 33. He's banged up. They didn't even know if he was going to come back. He's had the neck injury. After he hit Varlamov with the puck up high and knocked him out, Trotz didn't call him out by name, but that's the guy who hit him up high. I think he's played or tried to play better. But he's just another instance where he just can't skate as well anymore. That's what happens when you get older. I hate to keep repeating myself, but that players, once they get into 30s, especially players with that type of playing style, they fall off the cliff really quick. And that's what we're seeing with the guys on the fourth line for us. And honestly, some of the other players higher up on the lines.
And again, age is the undefeated. Yep, age is always undefeated, Grumpy Old Man. Bruce King said,
except for Tom Brady.
Okay, gotcha, Grumpy. Brush also comments in saying, I'm still picking Varlamov to get picked there in the expansion draft. Sorokin and Schneider. I don't know. I really don't know who's going to be selected there from our team in the expansion draft. I really don't know. I will tell you this, though, Grumpy. I've always said that you don't want to have – let me backtrack. In an ideal scenario, you want Sorokin to earn more than Varlamov in his next contract because that means he's fulfilled what we had expected and he's going to be the true number one goalie. You don't want to have a backup goaltender making $5 million a year, Grumpy, for another 3 or 4 years. It's just not ideal. So moving a guy like time period wouldn't make me the saddest.
They're going to protect Varlamov. They're going to protect him. They're not going to protect Snyder. They're going to protect Varlamov. Has Sorokin shown anything so far this year that lets you know that he can take over the number one spot? Not yet. Not yet. The season's still young. But, I don't think Varlamov, the way he's played so far this year, he had the bad game against Philly, but he's been really solid for us. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Again, I look at it like this too, Grumpy Old Man. I think Sorokin's starting to show signs. I thought he played outstanding against the Philadelphia Flyers there, that second half of the back-and-back, Grumpy. I thought he made a few outstanding saves, and that's kind of what we're expecting to see. I think he's getting a little bit more comfortable. Remember, he hasn't had too much offensive production and performance in front of him either. I think it will be reassuring as soon as he gets his first win, too. I'll be happy to see that. I'll be happy to see maybe it's like, whew, I get a sigh of relief. Here's my first win. The teams behind me, they feel comfortable with me in net.
Well, we'll see. Like I said, I don't see them. There's many other players on this team that I'd rather lose to the expansion draft than Semyon Varlamov. Many more.
And grumpy old man Tommy chiming in here saying Clutterbuck will not be back after this contract is over.
I hope not. I mean, maybe they may give him a 5-year extension too for a guy who's 33 years old. That would be real smart.
Grumpy old man. Yeah, again, I don't think.
Doesn't he have one more year left after this one?
I think one more year, but again, I think he might go long-term injury or just retire a year early. I really think it was. I mean, again, I'm not in his situation, but when you can't feel 3 of your fingers on a hand, that's when you're kind of getting to the point you're saying, all right, maybe it's time. And again, it's not like spring chicken. It's not like he's, 25, 26 years old or like, hey, I'm Ronnie Lott. I'm going to chop off a digit of my finger to get back out there because we're going to go win the Super Bowl or anything like that. So a little different scenario.
Well, there's quite a few guys who are ready for long-term injury on this team.
Grumpy old man here. And again, we got another comment here. Will saying, we will still have good pieces on our bottom six. Our top six, Barzal, and that's it at the moment. Like Grump said, you shut down Barzal and you shut down the New York Islanders.
Yeah, well, there you go. Our team is filled with bottom six players. It doesn't matter. That's why I'm saying, oh, well, Jarnac did this and this guy did this. Who cares? They don't solve our problem. Our problem is we don't have any high-end scoring. I mean, we're loaded with bottom six players. The whole organization is filled with them. That's who we draft, bottom six players. Why take a risk on somebody who could produce offensively when you can pick another bottom six guy? I think that's Lou's mantra at this point in career when he's drafting. You got Casper. You got the other guy, Grunstadt, that he drafted this year.
Lundkrantz, grumpy old man. I will tell you this much. I mean, again, you talk about the lack of offensive scoring. And again, I know it's juniors. I try not to take too much stock in juniors. William DeFore is playing pretty well, the 5th-round pick here from 2020. Again, I think he's got 9 goals through 10 games there for Drummondville. So, again, he's producing, grumpy old man. Again, it's juniors, though, so
does he play any defense? Does he play any defense? Because if he doesn't, he has no shot of playing on this team.
I can't tell you to watch many of their games, Grumpy, so –
well, if he plays in the Quebec Major Junior League, I'm going to say he's probably not great defensively. Now, he's a big kid. He's a big kid. I liked him actually better than Lundkrantz, honestly. I think they took a chance on a guy with skill there. I mean, I just don't believe in drafting guys who are just middling players to pass up high-end talent. I just think it's a recipe for disaster.
Got a comment here also there from Tommy saying Brock Nelson was at fault for 3 of those goals on Sunday night. I'll tell you, and I'm a huge believer, and I like Brock Nelson. I personally root for him. I think he gets a lot of hate. I will tell you one thing. Right now, the hate he's receiving is just. I mean, he was defensively out of position. He looked out of sorts. He's caught puck watching an awful lot, more than he usually is. So I'll tell you, I mean, that Sunday performance was not great. This is another scenario, right? He played poorly on Sunday. Didn't really contribute offensively, did do a great job what he was supposed to do defensively. In the same token, do you think a guy like that would ever be sent a message? No, but that's like everybody saying, hey, send Matt Barzal a message, send Matt Barzal a message. I like Brock Nelson. He does a lot for the team. Send Brock Nelson a message too, right? I'm saying if you're going to say, hey, send Matt Barzal a message, you also have to be saying, hey, send these other guys messages too. That's all.
He never gets called out by the coach. The coach loves him. He when they talked about him, well, what about Brock? Well, you know what? He's struggling a little bit, but you know what? He's earned, my trust. I don't care. It's a now business. It's not yesteryear business. It's how you're doing now. You see, look at the guys who are benched on good teams. Good teams have no problem benching guys like that. I mean, at least he didn't bench Matt Barzal. Now, I don't know if he would have benched him if he got out of the penalty box, because that's been his modus operandi too. Bench Matt Barzal. Make him the scapegoat for all that's wrong with this team. I'm stunned he signed back for 3 years. I would have just taken a 1-year deal. If I was him, I couldn't wait to leave this franchise.
Okay, Grumpy. I know you might be getting cranky because we're a little over an hour, grumpy old man. Matt Barzal, I think he likes Barry Trotz. He likes the team. He likes playing on the island. That being said, you made an earlier comment about benching him. Again, think about it earlier on in the year. Casey Cizikas was benched because of poor play defensively. So he's benched a few. Nick Leddy also. I'm just saying, do I think he'll ever go out of the moment and say, hey, you know what? You just didn't have a good game altogether. You've been struggling a little bit, Brock. I just want you to go ahead and take a moment, get composed. You know what I mean? Take a breath. We're going to give you this game off. I need you to come back ready to go. We just need you to clear your head. or whatever. You know what I mean? Do I think he'll ever do that with anybody in our top 6? Absolutely not. Except Matt Barzal. He probably would do that with Barzal, though.
Or Anthony Bavillier. No problem doing it with him either. He's benched him before. He's absolutely benched him before.
Okay, Grumpy. Brian here saying, at the deadline, can we clean house, please? Only untouchables are Barzal and Dobson. I know that's music. I know that's music to grumpy old man's ears.
He's not far off. I'm telling you. I mean, he's not far off. Those are the only 2 players even worth watching right now. You just see the growth in Dobson day by day. Barzal has just been fantastic this year. I don't care if he takes penalties or not. I think I really don't. That's not the reason why we're losing. Don't try to blame that loss on Matt Barzal. It started with below average, making a bad pass, which turned that into. But he was still fighting. You see Matt Barzal still out there fighting in the corners. When was the last time you see Anders Lee in a corner? When was the last time you saw him going in the corners? I'm going to give kudos.
Hold on, Grump. Hold on, Grump. You said when's the last time you saw him in a corner? The last time I saw him was in a corner was in that overtime game where he threw the puck towards the middle of the ice.
Did you see that skating stride? My gosh, that little choppy stride. He had a 15-foot lead on the guy and he got caught. I mean, and here's the thing. That's a difference. If that puck gets thrown out to an Anders Lee, a Brock Nelson, a Josh Bailey, that is not a goal. You throw it out to Matt Barzal, bingo. That's what snipers do. We don't have enough snipers on this team. That's right. Kaliev scored a goal. Oh, I forgot. We already talked about that. Or maybe Wahlstrom would have scored that goal. But you're not going to see those other guys do it. It's just so frustrating. Now, one thing, I do want to give credit to Josh Bailey because you know how I am. That was an excellent deflection goal by him. That was a really fantastic deflection goal. And everybody says, oh, Josh Bailey has been, he's with Anders Lee. That's why he's rejuvenated. He's playing so much better. No, it's because he's with Matt Barzal. And the human sidecar is just along for the ride. That's what he's there for. It's not like he's playing any better. Matt Barzal elevates the play of the ham and eggers that play on his line.
I will tell you. And again, I've always thought that and again, different subject, Grumpy. I've always thought that the reward of ice time and the reward of role has always been different for different players. And again, Brian brings up a good point here. Komarov makes mistakes, takes that huge 5-minute penalty, doesn't mark his man coming back, and then gets promoted to the second line. Given on the second line, he also did not perform and then was benched thereafter. Again, he was moved off the taxi squad, but again, the taxi squad's pretty fluid. Who knows what the lineup's going to look like next game? But this is a perfect scenario, right? He's another guy who's been making a plethora of mistakes. We don't need to see Leo Komarov ever again. If he's back in the lineup there Saturday against the Penguins, I will be shocked. Actually, I won't be shocked. I'll be disappointed.
Well, here's the thing. You keep on forgetting. Let's say one of the young guys, let's say Kiefer Bellows would have done that, or Oliver Wahlstrom. Let's say they would have done that. Those guys wouldn't have played again the rest of the year. But they're going to keep on rolling out Komarov because you know what? He's been in the battles before. We trust him in those situations. You know what? I don't care. Let's say Scott Niedermayer was a great defenseman at the time. What's he, 45 years old? He did it. He was great before in the past too. Should we roll him out there on the ice? No, because the game has passed him by. He's finished. There's a lot of guys on this team whose careers are over, but they still have a lot of money coming to them.
I won't say there's a lot. There's a hand. I mean, you can count them all on one hand. There's only a few, grumpy old man. I think Andrew Ladd is definitely one of them. That's not a Lou Lamoriello fault. I mean, that's something he inherited. And Leo Komarov, that was his own issue. I mean, he signed Leo Komarov the way he did. So I think Leo definitely poor contract and his career is finished.
I'm going to tell you, it's an uncomfortable amount of players who are not performing up to their contracts and are on the wrong side of 30. And a really uncomfortable amount going forward. It's more than one hit for me. I'm going to tell you that much right now.
I don't disagree with you on that, Grumpy. And again, this is the problem we've talked about for a long time. We talked about when a lot of these guys signed back 2 years ago. You're mortgaging the future for the right now. We're a team that the window was pretty tight. At least that's how they were treating it when they were signing a lot of these guys to these long-term deals. And again, I don't think Brock Nelson is one of those characters. I think Anders Lee, how long that contract was, that's definitely going to be an issue long term for certain. I mean, Jordan Eberle, I know, has performed a little bit as of right now, but that's another guy who has been spotty at best, who's been up and down. And you kind of worry long term about a guy who's a streaky goal scorer that, that's tied to a big contract like that. So again, there's a lot of opportunities hopefully available there with the expansion draft. But I don't disagree with the sentiment, Grumpy.
Well, I mean, Jordan Eberle, right? Doesn't skate as well anymore, right? Let's be honest. He's not the skater he was 2 years ago. He's in his 30s now. Anders Lee could never skate, and now he looks even worse. I mean, and how's that going to look 5 years from now? I mean, these are the type of things that you have to think about, and they continue to make those same dumb mistakes. Komarov, he was finished in Toronto. Matt Martin couldn't even get on the ice in Toronto. Here, he gets a 4-year extension. I mean, I don't understand. Nick Leddy, he played good for a couple of games. Now he's back to being Nick Leddy again. I mean, these are just the kind of things. They reward these guys with contract extensions. It's just frustrating to watch, honestly. Would it surprise me if Leo Komarov gets back in the lineup? Maybe immediately, but I think we're going to see more of Leo Komarov this year. I don't. There's no doubt that he's not going to play again this year.
I think he will play again. I just don't think he should be playing come Saturday against the Penguins. And again, I'm not opposed to a Leo Komarov in a one-game situation where it's like, hey, our fourth line's battered and destroyed right now. They need time off. Or penalty killers aren't there. Sure, I understand. We have a lot of guys right now on the roster that are healthy that play the penalty kill, though, which makes, in my opinion, Leo worthless. I
mean, and then you have, think about it. Casey Cizikas is up at the end of the year. Are they going to make the same mistake with him? What do you think? I think they will. I think they'll overpay to keep a guy who's injury prone, who had 1 year where he scored the 20 goals. Other than that, he's under a 10-goal-a-year scorer. He is what he is. He's a fourth-line center. You don't pay like guys like that $3.5 million a year. You just don't.
Grumpy old man. And Tommy Baffy also chiming in saying, I'll name the defensemen coming. Samuel Bolduc, Robin Salo, Bodie Wild, and Grant Hutton. Those four. And again, like those are guys, and this is again kind of moving back to that point Grumpy old man I was making earlier. I've heard people introduce this idea that maybe Ryan Pulak and Nick Leddy are not going to be here long term. They feel comfortable and confident in those guys just listed. And I'm just going to put it like this. I'm not saying yes, because I can't actually look and evaluate really many of the players as of the moment. So I can't say, yes, I'm 100% bought in all these guys. I'm just saying if that is the idea, you have to be able to have the cap space so teams can't screw you over because you're up against the cap. That's long term. That's what I want.
Okay, they're not here till they're here. Okay, but if you're moving Nick Leddy, he's going to get a contract extension. You watch. They'll re-sign him back. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they let their number one defenseman go. But what are you going to move him for? Are you just going to dump him because of all the other bad contracts, or are you going to try to get something back? They should have tried to get something of Devon Taves, but they didn't because he wasn't inventive enough to try to make a trade.
No, it's not that. And I just broke it down earlier. You didn't have the cap space. So you don't have any legs to stand on. When you don't have the cap space, teams can bend you over the barrel and lowball you because they know you have to make the move to be salary compliant. It's because you were up against the cap. That is the reason we didn't get anything for Devon Taves. And it's the same reason if we're up against the cap, we won't get anything for a guy like Ryan Pulak if we trade him.
Okay. You have plenty of guys you can put on long-term injury. Andrew Ladd should be on long-term injury. There's another $5.5 million. You could have made it work. It's the fact that he's not creative enough to do it. Right? You could have had Johnny on there. You could have Komarov on there. You could have sent Clutterbuck there. You could have sent Ladd there. All those guys could be a long-term injury because they all do have long-term injuries. That's what you could have done, but he wasn't creative enough. He's just not. He can't think outside the box. They need a young, smart thinker to help him with the financial aspects because he just can't do it. Unless it's, this is the way it is. I'm Lou. I think like this. I can't think outside the box. That's when you get what you get. They shouldn't let him handle any finances. Who's next? Who are they going to sign next? What other old, aging, don't need them veteran are we going to sign to 4 and 5 year extensions?
Grumpy old man. Maybe we'll bring back Scott Stevens. No, I'm just kidding.
Why not? He's only in his 50s.
Okay, we got a comment here from Michael Kaz saying Aho is too small. Hickey, number 2.
Well, he is too small, but in today's NHL, you can get away with that if you're a puck-moving defenseman, and that's what he is. Thomas Hickey's just a waste.
I'll tell you. In this system, though, you definitely cannot get away with that. I've always thought this. I think Sebastian Aho would and could be a bottom pairing defenseman at one point in time in the league. It's unfortunate because again, I don't think his defense has improved by leaps and bounds. When we saw him in that shortened time period in the Doug Weight system, again, it was a baptism by fire. that's a guy where I wouldn't be opposed if the right move or the right deal came along, if you throw him in as a sweetener. And again, I know he probably doesn't hold a lot of value, but he's not a guy, because he is smaller, that I think really pans out on this team. And I know we have Andy Green, who's not overly large, but Andy Green, man, oh man, he's special. Andy Green, especially back in his prime, was special. He's more of a defensive-minded guy than I think Sebastian Aho is or could be.
You said it there, back in his prime. He's not in his prime anymore. And he looks a step or two slow this year. I thought he was good last year in the playoffs, but I think he's looked a step or two slow right now. And Dobson is pretty much carrying him right now. So, Dobson improved by leaps and bounds. I'm never opposed to getting the way the game is progressing is smaller puck moving defensemen. Quinn Hughes is what, 5'9", 103 pounds, but he's able to move that puck.
He's not 5'9", grumpy old man. He's taller than that. I will tell you though, I think you do see, and again, the same exact thing. Boquist, and a lot of these younger defensemen that are smaller are getting their chances and opportunity. Again, they play different styles than us, though.
You have to be able to skate. You have to be able to skate. That's the one thing the smaller guys have to be able to do is skate.
We have a comment here, and I feel like it's a loaded question. Angela, you're giving us all these loaded questions. Is Barry Trotz, is Trotz overrated? No, I'll put it like this. I don't think Barry Trotz is overrated. Remember, this is the same team a little over 2 years ago under Doug Waits, Jack Capuano before him, and multiple other head coaches before that time period. We could barely scratch together to make the playoffs. Barry Trotz has turned, and I've always believed that the players and the cast and crew on this team are not terrific at the moment. The sum is definitely greater than the parts, in my opinion. Right now, we're seeing is that the sum is equal to the parts that we have. And it's a little bit of a shock to Islander fans. But yes, this is exactly if, he's not pulling off miraculous ability, if he's not miraculous at the time period and the players aren't playing Barry Trotz hockey 100% of the way, they do struggle. I think he's a system guy, and the system makes these lesser talented teams into real contenders for the playoffs. Contenders for the playoffs. Maybe not contenders for the Stanley Cup, but teams that can compete. If they have the offensive ability, real contenders.
You done? Grump,
I know I'm not getting hit with that from you, grumpy old man.
You done?
After all the monologues you've been hitting us with today.
You finished? Okay. He is overrated. That said, I think he's a good coach, but people are talking him like the second coming of Christ. Okay, he's not. Okay, he's had 1 year where he's been successful. One where he won a Stanley Cup with a superiorly talented team. He was on the ropes. They didn't even want to keep him after he won the cup. That should tell you something. They didn't even want to keep him after he won the cup. Yes, they won the cup. Everything fell into place for them. Ovechkin bought in. But they were just way more talented than we are. And Nashville. Right? How many times has he gotten out of the first or second round of the playoffs? Only like 3 or 4 times his whole career. Think about that. He got us to the Eastern Conference Finals. Great. I'm happy for it. That's as far as we could have went. I thought he did a masterful job last year. But I think his negatives, namely his inability to incorporate younger players into the roster, is a big negative. As far as I'm concerned, to the long-term success of a team. And if you consider success just, being a 7 or 8 team qualifying for the playoffs, pretty much every year and getting knocked off in the first round, maybe the second, that's not a success in my book.
Do you consider Andy Reid a successful NFL coach, Grumpy?
Andy Reid?
Andy Reid, yes.
He has his liabilities. But at least I'm going to tell you.
Do you consider Andy Reid a successful NFL coach? Grumpy?
Yes.
Pretty simple question. Okay. Yes. I think Andy Reid is almost identical to Barry Trotz. And hear me out as to the reasons why. Andy Reid is another guy who could never win the big game. He can go ahead and be successful in the regular season, just like Barry Trotz has. Look back at the old time periods back in Nashville, Grumpy. Those Barry Trotz teams had a lot of regular season points. They were somewhat successful in the playoffs, could never put them over the hump. And again, with the Washington Capitals, as soon as he goes ahead and gets a piece who is a Hall of Fame caliber player, just like Andy Reid does get the piece who is a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, he's able to win the big bit. He's able to win the big award. So, Grump, I think he's very similar to Andy Reid in that comparison.
Here's the difference. Andy Reid was able to modify his system to benefit the skill set that Patrick Mahomes has. You don't see that from Barry Trotz. It's his system or the highway. That's the difference between a good coach and a or a really good coach and a good coach. Because I think Barry Trotz is a good coach, but I don't think he's a great coach. He will not bend from his style. Where you've seen Andy Reid, that style from when Smith was the quarterback is way different than it is now with Mahomes. He modified his approach because he saw the talent. Barry Trotz does not do that. That's the difference between them.
Okay, Grumpy. I think that's a valid point. I still think they're very comparable. Besides that one little caveat, I think they're both very comparable with production in their careers. I think they really are. I think that makes a good point, though. A grumpy old man. Also, Tommy, speaking about Barry Trotz, TJ, why is Nelson out there in overtime in a 4-on-3 scenario situation over Pajot or Cizikas? It's a terrible decision by Trotz. I think that's a good point. I mean, again, I think Brock has struggled this year, and I think definitely Cizikas and John Gabriel Pajot are more apt to handle a shorthanded situation like that in overtime.
Pajot should have been out there. I think Cizikas has been a step slow this year. I think the injuries have caught up to him. Pajot is one of our better players on our team night after night. The reason why Nelson was out there, because Barry Trotz trusts him. I mean, he doesn't look with his eyes. He looks with nostalgia. He's got stars in his eyes. Oh, well, Kroc has been good for us in the previous 2 years. Let's roll him out. Leo Komarov, he was great 3 years ago. Let's roll him out. I trust him. I don't care that he can't keep up or gets a 5-minute high-sticking penalty for running a guy from behind, and then he comes out and give up a game-winning goal. We're going to roll him out there the next night and give him a reward. Let's put him on the second line. He was so bad last night. Let's move him on the second line. Maybe he'll make Brock look better because Komarov was so bad. But no, they just all look horrible.
Okay, Grumpy. Brian here chiming in saying Trotz had a team in Nashville. They always drafted a bunch of great D-men, but they never could score or develop scores. 15 years, they never got past the second round.
There you go. That's my point in a nutshell right there. I mean, yes, they had good defense. But you know something? You got to put the puck in net to win games. You got to score more than 2 goals a game to win games. I mean, you just can't do it, especially this year. I mean, I thought if we came out hot, which I really thought we would, that we'd be okay. But coming out the way we've come out, the only 2 teams we've really beaten. We were lucky to beat Boston. The only 2 games we really played well was against the first games against the Rangers and the Devils. That's it.
Yeah, Grumpy. We also have a comment. I agree. Again, I think we have looked underwhelming. I thought we actually played well against the Flyers despite only getting 2 points and 2 overtime losses. I think those are 2 games that actually played better. We have to right the ship. We need to right the ship, though, Grumpy.
Yeah, one thing is evident. We can't beat the Flyers in overtime. We just can't beat them in overtime. Didn't they beat us 3 games in the playoffs in overtime? And then the first 2 games this year, everything overtime, they beat us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Grumpy, I think that's a good point here. Also, 2 minutes pessimistic, he said, please let's end the Cizikas line. They're done. These guys are good soldiers, but the Cizikas line is done. Time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, that line makes, almost $9 million a year? You don't think we'd use that $9 million somewhere else? I think we can. That's what happens when you overpay bottom line players too much money. You want to know how you get in cap hell? That's how you do it. And so instead of trying to trade our number 1 defenseman, how about we get rid of the garbage at the bottom of our roster or the other guys who aren't producing? You don't get rid of your good players because you have salary cap issues. You dump the other garbage. I don't care if you have to give up all your draft picks. Anything I can do to get the junk off of our roster of the overpaid veterans, I'm all for.
I am smiling, Grumpy, ear to ear. This is a comment that I know is going to make you smile. You're not a big fan of eyes on aisles. You never have been, never were. I think you detect.
Okay. No, I read them because I find them. It's like the National Enquirer, the New York Islanders. I read it, because, but they're company men for the most part. They very rarely speak out against the company line.
Well, this is a comment that speaks to that, Grumpy. Jerry's saying here, you guys give a far better analysis than the Eyes on Isles crew.
Well, everything's sunshine and, lollipops and gumdrops as far as they're concerned. And even when they do call somebody out, they apologize for it. I'm like, what? I mean, I'm like, stop apologizing. I mean, just call it for what it is. I mean,
Here's a comment here from Scott. He says, when the AHL season starts this week, do you think Sorokin should go to Bridgeport and be the starter? Just let Schneider and Varlamov be the Islanders goaltenders for a while. Do you think that's what do what the Rangers did with Shesterkin? I'll tell you this. I think there's no way Sorokin will be moved down to Bridgeport, and here's my reason why. When Varlamov got absolutely shelled earlier on this year and gave up 5 goals in that second period against the Washington Capitals, Barry Trotz didn't pull him, didn't even think about moving Corey Schneider in net. I think he has no plans on playing Corey Schneider anytime soon. I guess if we had a more competent player, or I wouldn't say competent. If we had a player maybe he trusts a little more than Corey Schneider, sure, I could see this being a possibility. I just really don't think he has any trust in Corey Schneider.
Why did you sign him then? Why did you sign him? There was no need to sign him then. I mean, I have no problem with Sorokin going down to the AHL. Absolutely none. He needs to play. And if you're just going to play him once every 4 or 5 games, he's not going to get developed. Let the young guys play. If you're not going to play him, give him where he can play. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they sent Wallstrom down to the A. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Why? Because he scored a goal for this team, and we don't want to score goals.
Here's my thing and my question. This year, we're not going to play as many games as some of the other teams in the AHL are, because we're only going to be playing against 2 teams all season long, grumpy old man. It's not like we're going to be playing 50 games against 2 teams. So, I mean, like our season is going to be a lot more actual development and a lot more practice. It's not going to be as many games as people think, which is unfortunate. So I'm not sure if that's going to play an effect. If we were going to play, maybe a 30 or 40 game season in the A, maybe that would change things. I'm just not sure with the smaller schedule against only 2 teams, or how that will affect, the mindset of the Islanders organization.
Well, you know what? I just want the kid to play. You need to play. If you really want him to get better, he's got to play. Sitting on the bench and practicing with the team is not going to get you better. You learn about game situations during games. I mean, let's be honest, right? Sorokin has gotten better, and the first game was bad. The second game was, I thought his rebound control, he gave up maybe 1 rebound the last game that I would consider a bad one, but he's getting better. I think the more that he plays, particularly on this smaller ice surface, the better he'll get. If he only plays once a week or, once every 4 games, I don't think that's good for his development. You want him to be ready. I mean, to me, it's not about this year at this point. It's about making sure he can play ready, be ready to go next year. And I'm not giving up on the year, but I mean, we have to turn it around fast.
Grumpy old man here. We got a comment here from Tom. He says, Ryan Pulock likes it here. He will re-sign again, guaranteed. And again, Tommy also chiming in again. This is the same exact topic. He says, I will say this now. The Islanders need to either sign Pulock to an extension this offseason or trade him and be proactive there for a nice return.
Well, anything we learned about Lou Lamoriello, he is not proactive. He is reactive. His mantra is, if you got time, use it. He will not be re-signed to an extension. He just signed a 2-year deal this year, so they won't extend him. Should they? Absolutely, but I don't think he will. I think he'll let him go to free agency, and if they lose him, they lose him. That's just the way they are. Because I'm sure there's some other pieces of guard. Letty's contract is coming up in 2 years, and they're going to re-sign him. They're re-signing him. I
think, unfortunately, they would. Again, I wouldn't mind seeing Letty leave either, especially if the younger players can step up and they will play. Again, I think Letty's had a good start to the season. I think Letty does a lot of things that just continually frustrate me, though. I hate the lack of effort sometimes. And you said it also with Anders Lee. Those type of items, when you're in the offensive zone, you throw the puck towards the middle and it allows there for a fast break for the other team. That type of stuff drives me insane. Insane. It's terrible.
And these are your trusted veterans, the guys that you give so much rope because they've been there, they've done it. You're right. They turn the puck over all the time. I mean, how much more of that do you have to see? I mean, that's the thing with me. It's like they make the same mistakes over and over. At some point in time, you have to realize they are what they are. I mean, average, below average, he is what he is. Nick Leddy is what he is. The glory days from 2016 are over for him. Absolutely over.
And 2 minutes pessimistic also chiming in on a different platform with the same exact item. And again, these are all older ones, Grumpy. I'm sorry. It's been taking me a while to get to all the comments today. Sell high on Pulock unless he resigns to a decent deal money-wise. Again, this seems to be a shared sentiment. I don't disagree with it.
Okay. I'm just not for selling young defensemen. Absolutely not. And I don't care. I'd rather for the expansion draft, there is nobody. I'm not keeping anybody I'm not protecting anyone who makes more than a couple $1 million, with the exception of Matt Barzal. Everybody else, expose them. Anders Lee, exposed. I don't care if he's the captain. You think they're going to take him? It would be a godsend if they take one of those old veterans. Letty, expose him. Bailey, expose him. Nelson, expose him. Everly, expose him. It helps us get that money off our cap. All you're going to get is diminishing returns from them anyway. I would pray that they take them. They're going to – you watch them – you watch us lose Kiefer Bellows because, well, you know, he doesn't make much money. That's the perfect guy for them to pick up. A 22, 23-year-old to fit in a team like that, that's exactly what an expansion team should do.
Okay, Grumpy. Thomas Klein chiming in saying, what do you think about trading away older players like Bailey, Clutterbuck, Letty, if nothing just to free up cap and get younger? Grumpy,
100%.
that's speaking.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, Grumpy. That's speaking music to your ears, Grumpy old man, is what I was going to say.
You want to get out of cap jail? Get rid of those guys who don't bring anything to the table and make too much money. Other teams are able to do it. How come you're not able to? Other teams are able to incorporate young players in the lineup. How come you're not able to?
Gotcha, Grumpy.
You have to question management.
Gotcha, Grumpy. Hey, Grumpy, we're going to try to fly through the last few of these comments here because we're around 1 hour and 30. Salo needs to play in Bridgeport first. I don't disagree with this at all. And again, I think Robin Salo will find a spot on the NHL roster for the Islanders in some capacity sooner, probably rather than later. I have no issue at all because I don't think it benefits him at all if he were to sit down as a healthy scratch or to be a guy on the taxi squad. I don't think that benefits him very much.
100% agreement on that. Next.
Robin Salo will play when he's 33 years old.
Or maybe 37, like Andy Green.
Oh, grumpy old man. Yep, and then this is Tommy also further elaborating on that. Let him come over, play in Bridgeport, then have him ready for camp next year and have a shot with the team.
100% agreement.
Yep. Here we go as well. Here, Tom White saying moving out a guy like Pulak and having to bring in more rookies and taking their time to get them to mold them into NHL players. We're starting the rebuild again? ? We will be the next Detroit.
If you want to start a rebuild,
no, I think that was the question.
Yeah, if we want to start a rebuild, which I'm not opposed to, you don't get rid of the Ryan Pulaks on your team. You get rid of all the older guys who make too much money. They're the albatrosses around our neck, not Ryan Pulak, not Adam Pelech, not Anthony Beauvillier, not Matt Barzal. Lee, Everly, Nelson, Bailey, Clutterbuck, Cizikas, Martin. Those are the guys who are the albatrosses. Those are the guys you move out. You move out the old veterans, not the young guys.
We got a comment here also. Brian saying everyone overrated this team because of the COVID run. Every year, everyone had a full off season, then played a tournament in a bubble with no fans. Anyone could have made a run. It's like Buffalo 2 years in a row started red hot and missed the playoffs.
Yeah, well, that's what happens, right? I mean, if we didn't have the COVID break last year, we were not going to make the playoffs, and then maybe the team reassesses. I think it was kind of fool's gold when you said, oh, look, well, hey, we made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't care. The team is not constituted to win a Stanley Cup. Not even close. I mean, if we wouldn't have beat Boston, there's certain teams we wouldn't have beaten. I mean, you're seeing it this year. I mean, Boston looks really good all of a sudden. Washington looks really good. Philadelphia, I think we can beat Philadelphia, even though we haven't. But, I mean, we're just going to – if we make it, it's going to be in the fourth spot.
Yeah, and again, I don't think we were ever going to be in the top two positions. I always thought if we were going to come in, it was going to be anywhere from 3 to 4. And again, I always said from 3 to 6 or even 7 in the East Division was going to be an absolute crapshoot. Here you go. Matthew saying Sorokin is not eligible for protection. I think with what Bruce was saying, he was saying that we would protect Corey Schneider. As I think what he was hinting at. Again, who knows? I think it's so far off there. And this year, I think a lot depends on how we perform this year. Because you're right, if Varlamov plays the way he has this year, I don't think there's any way we expose him. Yeah, and again, that's a situation where we would pay ideally a backup goalie, $5 million a year. Not ideal, but Varlamov plays too well. Where even if he's an asset, you rid of him. It'd be more beneficial to trade him than just let him walk for free to an expansion draft.
But here's the thing. We overpaid for Varlamov. We didn't have to pay him that much in that much term. There wasn't a market for him. We overpaid for him. Just like we do with anybody that we sign, we overpay for veterans with term and dollar. I mean, it's the same mistake we make over and over again. I mean, until those mistakes are cut out, we're going to continue to have these issues.
Yeah, Grumpy. And again, we got a few more comments here. These are some older ones. I'm sorry, I'm just getting to here. Tommy's saying, not having feeling in three fingers for any professional sport is quite the problem. Yeah, I imagine gripping the stick. I mean, like, again, like it's so easy just to overpass and not really think about that. Like, even just like normal everyday life like that. Man, oh man, that's going to be tough.
Yeah. I mean, kudos to Cal Clutterbuck. I mean, he had a couple of serious injuries last year and he came back. You're never going to hear me rip him. Because he's a gamer. I just think that, with older players, it just kind of is what it is. I mean, he could go on long-term injury next year. I mean, there's so many things we can do with the cap, but I don't think the fossil is just up on any of them, honestly.
Michael also chiming in saying, we are a team that plays playoff hockey, and at this rate, we aren't built on a 56 grinded out style. And again, like to play devil's advocate, we played well at the beginning half of last year. And I know you could tell we kind of tapered off at the end, right around 50 some odd games. That's when we kind of started to tail off a little bit. It's really tough when your team always has to out effort everybody. I mean, that's a style where even if you can get 100% buy-in, and I'm talking about there's no doubt in anybody's mind. If you get 100% buy-in, that can work for a year or two. But again, as your players get older, they do not have the ability and the stamina to continue that playoff style hockey game in a game out, I don't think.
Well, you hit it right on the head once again, DJ. It's the age, the fact that the players are older. They don't recover from injury. They're more injury prone. They don't come back from injury as quick. And that style is conducive to picking up injuries. It just is what it is. And, it just seems like our management staff isn't bright enough to figure that out yet.
Okay, got you here. Tom White also says, lack a top three forward. It's our Achilles heel. Poor power play, a lack of scoring. We won't get much further if we don't find some skill. Again, this is music to Grumpy and I's ear. Again, I think we always did need a scorer. A sniper it's needed. It's desperately needed. Grumpy old man here. This is one for you, Grumpy. I know you're gonna like it. Brian says, exactly, Grump. I doubt Al Arbor ever told Mike Bossy that he can't play until he improves his 200-foot game.
Absolutely not. I guess when you score 50 goals, like I said, Mike Bossy couldn't play for this team. Wayne Gretzky couldn't play for this team. Mario Lemieux couldn't play for this team. Why? They didn't play enough defense. I don't care if you score 200 points a year. You're not playing because you don't play defense on this team. We're going to make an example out of you. We're going to take your game and try to crush it and jam it into my style. My style, it doesn't work. I'm going to try that. Well, just so you can we don't care about Stanley Cups. We just care about we'll make the playoffs every year. This isn't Nashville. This is New York. I mean, they're just happy to have a team in Nashville.
Smashville, grumpy old man is the phrase they ran on back in that time period. Christopher, he says, hi guys, new viewer here. Hey, new viewer. So here's my question. I don't know Lou's moves too well, but why didn't he use the cap space we had last offseason to make moves during the offseason? And made moves during the offseason?
Because he would have had to be creative, and that's not something he does. He's not creative enough. I keep on saying, to me, you should be right now approaching those players whose contracts are up next year and try to re-sign them now. I thought he should have been trying to re-sign Barzal, Pulak earlier last year or even the year before. Lock those guys up on longer-term deals, paying them a little bit less annual salary and buy out maybe a year or two of free agency. That's what he should have done, but he did the exact opposite by signing older players back to ridiculously long terms and really pathetic money. And that's why we're in the situation we are. Young guys are the future of the team. Old guys, the past.
Grumpy old man. Again, I think with this one, it's unfortunate. We did go ahead and sign. I think this even dates back to 2 off seasons ago. And again, I think if the Islanders didn't sign back after they missed out on Panarin, if they didn't sign back a guy like Anders Lee, I think you would have seen a immediate knee-jerk reaction from the fan base. Oh my gosh, we lost a guy who was hold on. I know you're shaking your head, Grumpy, but I'm just telling you, this is how the fan base would have reacted. Oh my gosh, we lost a guy who was a top 6 forward for us. We didn't get Panarin. What shall we do? Whatever shall we do? And it definitely would have been a knee-jerk reaction from the fan base. So I think that's why he reacted, and he made sure he did anything he can to sign back Anders Lee to that long contract with a lot of cap attached to it. We got here another comment here from Tom White saying, Nelson needs to see the game from above for a night. It might make things click for him. I don't disagree. He's not been great so far this year.
He, like I said, he's been the guy who's benefited the most for playing Trotz, but right now he's playing like he did before Trotz got here, which was always my issue with him. Soft, stupid, not real good. Scores goals. He'll get your 20 goals, but when they don't mean anything. That was the Brock Nelson of old. He hasn't been like that the last 2 years. I want to go back on the other thing just to touch on it real quick, where you were talking about a couple of years ago with
yes, Grumpy.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, TJ.
Yes, Grumpy. I was talking about the cap mismanagement a couple of years ago.
Right. I mean, that's we've talked about that enough. Just move on. I know it's good.
I know, Grumpy. It's we got here. I want to bring this one up here. It says guys like Nelson, Lee, Beauvillier, Bailey, and Eberle are second liners, not first liners, and they're also not the bottom 6 forwards. It's like it's in that weird in between where we don't have enough of that top elite end talent that fill out a first line, but we have a lot of guys who could be second liners and successful second liners, and a lot of guys who are bottom 6 forwards.
I would like to see as a second line, honestly, Nelson, Lee, and Bailey. I think they play well together. They're all useless, and I can focus my hate on one line. Eberle has slowed down this year. Beauvillier has had a history with Barzal in the past. I'd want to go back to that just to see. I mean, right now, the second line is just invisible.
Yeah, I tell you. And again, I think Beauvillier not being there and being able to drive the line has definitely hurt that. Him being obviously able to skate, hopefully being integrated back into the lineup will help that. But even at the beginning of the season, again, it wasn't clicking for the second line yet. You have to hope as soon as he gets back, he's healthy, that it starts clicking for him again, because we need the production out of that second line. We have a comment here from Tommy Baffy also saying, I did not want us to sign Eberle back. Lee and Nelson, yes, I did. But Eberle, I would rather use the money elsewhere, like a guy on Hoffman or Hall.
Well, Hoffman or Hall weren't free agents till this past offseason, so that wouldn't have worked. Now to get back to the other point, when you say that the fans would have had a knee-jerk reaction to letting Lee go, well, you know something? You're here to make the team better. You're not here to pacify the fans. I mean, so you're putting him in the Garth Snow category then, because that was the knee-jerk reaction when we lost Kyle Okposo and Franz Nielsen to sign Andrew Ladd. I mean, so you're looking at the same thing just with another generation. And to me, if the guy wasn't worth it, I would have offered Lee, if you want to stay here, I'm going to give you a 4-year contract at $5 million per. Take it or leave it. I mean, they overpaid for him. They didn't need to. If he didn't want to be here, move on. The same thing with Matt Martin this year. You're going to get vet minimum for 1 year. If you get a better deal somewhere else, see you later. You don't overpay for those guys. I don't care what you've done in the past. It's what you can do in the future. That's all I care about. And that's what any GM should care about.
Grumpy old man. Michael also saying, Grumpy, as far as long-term injury goes, I think ownership refuses to just pay out these contracts for players that won't do anything and won't even be part of the actual organization.
Well, I don't think these guys are like the ownership groups that we've had in the past. I don't think that I can't speak positively on that, but I don't think that would stop them from making that move. I just think Lamoriello doesn't want to take a chance. He always wants to take as much time as possible, and that's why you have to move Devon Toews for 2 second-round draft picks, because you're not smart enough to know that Boychuk was going to go long-term injury and Andrew Ladd should be on long-term injury. Then you could have signed all those guys back, including Toews, and then move a Nick Leddy. If you want to dump somebody for a second-round draft pick or a third-round draft pick, I'd much rather you move Nick Leddy with his diminishing returns.
Grumpy old man. And Tommy Baffy says, the New York Rangers have plenty of skill. How are they doing? I'll tell you one thing. I know we haven't talked about this on the podcast. Man, oh man, what a freaking circus it is for the Rangers with D'Angelo and everything that's going on there. Man, oh man, you want to talk about a cancer in the locker room. Yikes.
I think their coach. I don't like their coach. He's a college guy, isn't he? A college coach. I don't even. I've forgotten his name, so he can't be any good. They need a different coach there. I mean, they do have talent. Their defense is not very good. Anytime you're playing a rookie on your first pair who's not named Bobby Orr or Dennis Potvin, you're going to be struggling. And I think that's the case with Miller this year. I think he's going to be a good defenseman, but they're hurting defensively right now.
Grumpy, Dave Quinn is the coach.
Dave Quinn, that's right. Yeah. And I think he coached it. Who cares, Bill?
No, Boston University, a.k.a. Who Caresville.
Boston University is a good college program, but it's a college program. It's the pros.
Mm-hmm. Grumpy old man. Grumpy, I know we have a lot of comments here. Okay.
You are doing your job then.
Grumpy, you're talking. We've got a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of things rolling in, Grumpy old man. I know this is usually wrapped up in an hour and 15. Sorry it's taking so long, Grumpy.
I'm willing to answer every question. I don't care.
Oh, we got one here too. Hold on, before we jump to Tommy's. Eyes on Ilos has 100 trade rumors, and they've all been wrong. They stink.
They're fun to read, though. They're fun to read. They're usually wrong. I know Johnny Gaudreau, all these guys. That's right. On page 6 on New York Post, National Enquirer, they are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And you blasted through one that was up there previously.
Oh, no, I'm going to bounce back to you, Grumpy. Don't worry about it. Tom White also says, this is, again, I'm just trying to make sure I hit everything in line here. Trotz is coaching with what he's given. Same makeup in Nashville is what he has here. Washington was loaded with skill. Just had to teach him how to play the other side of the puck.
And it took him 5 years to do that. So he got a cup, though. He got a cup. And I don't begrudge him. I say he's a good coach. I just think if everyone thinks he's the be-all, end-all of coaches, he's not. There are other coaches better than him.
Here you go, TJ and Grump. I have a question, a non-Islanders related question. It's funny, I didn't look at this ahead of time. Your thoughts on D'Angelo and what it will take for the Rangers to trade him? Man, oh man, I'll tell you,
they're ready to give him away right now. They said he's never going to play for them again. So, I mean, when you say stupid things like that, what do you think his value is on the open market? Not much.
I'll tell you, it's unfortunate too because that's a guy who needs to kind of get his priorities straight. I mean, like, you can't be a cancer in the locker room. And I guarantee you it's not like that was just the initial incident. There has to have been something else. And again, this has not just been something that happened overnight. Jerry chiming in saying, have you guys seen Don Cherry's YouTube video where he says that Josh Hosang is more talented than McDavid? I've seen Don Cherry speak very, very highly of Hosang back during the time period when he was going to get drafted. I know he definitely thought he did have an immense amount of talent. I have seen a video similar to that.
I don't know if he ever said he's better than McDavid. If he said that, he's mistaken. But I'm going to tell you what, Josh Hosang could have played for Al Arbor. He just can't play for this group. Al Arbor would have found a guy with skill, and he would have got him on the ice. Absolutely. Best players play. That's not the case here.
Tommy also saying, Letty on a cheap deal as a third pair defenseman for 2 years, I'm fine with.
Absolutely not. Don't need him anymore. He's a third pair defenseman now. Why would you want to sign him in another 2 years? Absolutely not. Done with him.
Scott also chiming in and said, can't get rid of Pulak. I don't want to have to get another jersey. Only have had my home Pulak jersey since April.
You get yourself a grumpy old man jersey. They're hot sellers.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he's wearing the grumpy old man jersey. Oh, gosh, Grumpy.
Number 1. With a bullet.
Oh, grumpy old man. Grump, I think that about wraps everything. Oh, here we go. Oh, goodness. I know this is going to make you happy. Sal says, Grumpy should take over the general manager role. He seems to understand what Lou does not. You can't keep throwing money at years at aging, mediocre talent.
Once again, Sal, very intelligent. Sal Portelli, I like him.
Sal, if you compliment the grumpy old man too much, he won't be able to fit his head through the door to get to the bathroom and leave the house.
And I just want to tell you something. He's got a very cute child in the picture with him. I love it. I love the hat, too.
Oh, grumpy old man.
Honestly, it's just common sense. It's common sense. Sometimes you lose it. Like I said, Lou's 78 years old. I mean, he was a great GM 20 years ago. He was. Just not anymore.
Tommy, and this will be the last comment. Grumpy old man says, Scott, get yourself a Martin jersey. He's going to be here for a while. LOL.
Very good. Love it.
Okay. Oh, hi, Chris here. We got one more. I'm sorry. Holy crap. He calls you Mr. Grumpy. You do not have to call him Mr. Grumpy. Just say Grumpy old man, something like that. My last question. You said age is what counts. Look at Brady. If someone is 40 years old can do that, why not here? Hockey's just a little bit of a different sport. And I'll tell you one thing. Tom Brady is the ageless wonder.
He's a unicorn. He's a unicorn. He is the exception to every rule. Greatest quarterback ever. I was going to wear my Brady gear, but you know what? I didn't want to. I believe I would jinx him if I did wear it. But I'm going to tell you what. If he wins the Super Bowl next Wednesday's podcast, I'm definitely breaking out the Brady gear.
Oh, God. I'll tell you, he wears more non-Islanders related paraphernalia than anything else. And it's funny because we have the Islanders podcast. Grump, I guess it's also time to mention it. We will not have a live stream after Saturday's game against the Pittsburgh Penguins because I know, Grumpy, hold on. I thought I filled you in on this. Maybe I didn't. I'm sorry if I didn't, Grumpy old man. I'll be at a wedding, Grumpy old man. And I told her, I got Paige. She hasn't jumped on with Paige's word or Stump the Grump for a while, so she's been dropping the ball. But yeah, so I told Paige, I said, I'm going to have to be able to watch the Islanders game in some capacity. I don't know if we'll be able to do a live stream, Grumpy. We might be able to do is we'll probably have to pre-record, or maybe we'll record there on a Friday or something. I don't know. We'll play it by ear, and we'll make sure we post it to let everybody know.
Okay.
Grumpy old man.
All right. I honestly, I wish we would have saved some of these questions for Friday then. I'm ready to go. Right now, I'm fired up.
I was about to say, Grumpy, you see me drink out of this chalice. 2 hours in, Grumpy, I'll tell you. I always have to, I've got to use the restroom as soon as we get done with the podcast, Grumpy old man. But is there anything else you want to say? We're about an hour and 55 in, Grump, the longest podcast we've had to date. Anything you want to say, Grumpy old man?
No, I just love talking Islanders hockey. I know I can come off sounding kind of negative, but it's only because I want them to be winners. A lot of the people who I just see the pictures of the people's faces, they've never known an Islander winning team. So, maybe they're happy. Just, hey, we make the playoffs. That's great. I can understand that. The Islanders have been a loser franchise for a long time. I'm just striving for something greater.
I don't disagree, Grumpy. And I tell you, man, the character Grumpy old man plays. Some people, you could tell the new people, they get a little bit, they throw their hands up. They've never seen a grumpy old man, and I feel like those are people who've never lived in New York either.
Hey, I don't live in New York any longer, but that's where I was born and raised.
Yeah, grumpy old man. Well, thank you for being a part of the podcast as always, grumpy old man.
My pleasure.
And thank you so much, everybody, for who's here on the live stream. Again, we love being able to talk with all the listeners there, the podcast and the live stream. Grumpy old man and I do very much so appreciate it. Thank you, grumpy old man, once more.
Thank you.